I think we can start.
Great. We will wait another minute just in case, people said, I just got left by 5 minutes. Okay. Great. So we have about 30. I was hoping to hit 35 before we start. Yeah. Okay. Oh, great. Done. Great. So thank you all, my dear guests, for coming and joining us in this session. We have now about 35 participants. What I would request is that each one of you put their company name along with their name, and if possible, the city's name where they belong. So each one of you has been put on mute purposely. You can, of course, we would request you to switch on your camera. But you could send us all your questions in the chat, and I would make a note of it, which we will take it up at the end of the session. Probably we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A session at the end. So just to give a quick intro on our guest. So we have Madhuri Hegde here, the beautiful lady you can see on the screen. So a quick intro. Madhuri Hegde is co-founder and CEO at Suma Lingve Technologies and comes with about 20 years of experience in translation, cross-cultural communications, marketing, software localizations, and entrepreneurship. She founded a language services company in 2003 in India, which is now part of Suma Lingve Technologies, one of the top 100 largest language and technology solution providers in the world. Madhuri has an excellent perspective on the challenges faced by businesses worldwide and provides valuable insight into how they can be overcome. Her vast experience and fascination for different cultures has enabled her to create solutions that help companies and people succeed globally. Her interest spans across localization automation, e-learning, entrepreneurship, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, and blockchain. Having successfully delivered various multilingual tech solutions across industries, Madhuri is now an advisor and mentor to various technology initiatives. I'll also welcome Krzysztof Danowski. He is an entrepreneur, of course. He grew up in Polish-Canadian family and studied and graduated from the Tischner European University in Poland and the European University of Rome in Italy. In 2009, he built his first business, now one of the top 100 largest multilingual data management providers in the world, with an annual revenue exceeding $25 million. As CEO of Suma Lingve Technologies, he has developed a unique business model based on a combination of organic growth and M&A strategy. He took the company public in Warsaw Stock Exchange and raised multiple angel and private equity and debt rounds, about $30 million plus, and managed a number of mergers and acquisitions across Poland, India, Romania, Scandinavia, USA, and Canada. Krzysztof is fascinated by process of innovation in cultural and business environment. He has invested and advised in 30 plus equity and debt projects. Krzysztof frequently keynotes conferences and has been a mentor and panelist and speaker at 100 plus events. Essentially, Krzysztof is an entrepreneur, investor, licensed airplane pilot. Yes, he's pilot. And he's also an active long distance runner. I bring you our interviewer of this session, Mr. Sandeep Nulkar. He's also president of Sitlob and founder of BITS Pune. I hand over the session to Sandeep now. Sandeep.
Thank you so much, Sudhin, and welcome everyone. I think very honestly, I can't think of a better topic and better people to kickstart our first webinar with. Madhuri and I go back a long way, about 15 years. Usually in most industries you have competitors. We have this weird industry where we hardly have any competitors. We are more friends. We have had so much fun together, not only just Madhuri but Sudhin and Biraj and all of them. So we've had some very nice moments. So I hope some of that comes across in the way we are going to talk. It's more of a chat rather than an interview. And I've honestly even known the little that I've always interacted with Christoph. I've found him to be a very fun person. Obviously, the activities that he does are absolutely out of this world, literally too, because I think he has also done some skydiving and stuff like that. So crazy things. But yeah, so yeah, let's just try to keep this fun, informal, informative, and something everyone can take back. So just to give a background, I think we have about 109 registrations so far. And very honestly, I was expecting a few dozen at the most. As in, that's what you expect from India. You do nothing, you get a few dozen people. But this is double that. So I think couldn't have been happier. Also, thanks to Asavi, she has really been at it, and a lot of our industry peers, right from the UATC, Women in Localization, Gala, all of them have chipped in. So that's been a great contribution. So the background is very simple. I think this topic clearly has generated a lot of interest. So either people want to sell, or people want to buy, or like true Indians, they want to see what's happening. So one of the three things, but no matter what the reason, I think the fact of the matter is the topic is interesting. Let me just take back everyone a little. I think Lionbridge, to my mind, was one of the first people that saw potential in India. At a time, not too many people saw too much potential in India, and they set up shop here quite a long time ago. I guess about 2005-6 or somewhere around that time, Euroscript, which used to be one of the top 5-6 companies globally, they set up an office in Delhi. Now, of course, they're called Amplexer. More recently, I think from global companies, we had the Big Word setting up shop here. And then this whole trend of language technology companies started, and one of the first major news to come out of that sector was Reverie being taken over by Reliance, 83% stake for about 250 million rupees. I'm purposely not going to convert that into dollars because I just get the feeling that it just looks too trivial, and the enormity of the rupee in India should not really be undermined. So, which is why I'm going to keep it at 250 million. RWS goes ahead and acquires Web Dunia for 150 million. The government of India announces that they will fund translation projects worth 100 million rupees over the next 1 year through the various government bodies. So clearly a lot is happening. I see exciting times ahead, I guess. So my first question is to you, Madhuri. What are your thoughts on the Indian market? How do you see it now as an insider with a ringside view?
This question you should ask Chris, really, because I know I'm an insider with a ringside view, but I'm very excited about all the changes that are happening and so much attention being given to our industry, especially. I think we've always been we've never been in the forefront. We've never been where we are today in terms of importance of translation and languages in India. And it's really exciting to see what's happening. And I see a lot of interesting things happening moving ahead as well. A lot of hope for us, a lot of exciting times ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, rewinding a little, did you kind of foresee this kind of potential? Because when we kind of had foreign languages as the focus, it was a pretty defined, predictable sort of a market. Not that there was less potential, but it was kind of at least predictable. Now, from where I see it, it's gone to unpredictable, as in no one knows where the next demand is going to come from. There are so many sectors, so many languages. It's just blown out of proportion at times. Sometimes one gets the feeling, but then the kind of opportunities there are tell a different story. So, did you? Firstly, the first question is: did you see this kind of a potential, and how did you prepare your company? As in, was acquiring or being acquired always part of the plan, or it was just very India focused and Mayflower focused?
Okay. It was never India focused. Being acquired wasn't part of the game plan. When I started in 2003, it was purely about creating a world-class company that catered to world-class clients. Because if you really look at what we started with, it was software localization and purely in non-Indian or foreign languages. We were probably one of the only companies then that were offering only purely foreign language translations or localization. And so the focus was on processes, the focus was on communication, focus was on making sure we got, foreign clients, but we were primarily catering to software localization companies, mostly US-based companies that were operating in India, in Bangalore, and that was the primary focus then. It was never about getting acquired, but then exit is always on an entrepreneur's mind. You call yourself an entrepreneur, you have an exit in mind. So you do build your company. We did build our company to a certain standard. We made sure that whatever we were doing was in line with what the rest of the world was doing, and that I think was very, very important when it came to Sumalingwe, especially considering us for a merger. Rest, of course, Chris will tell you, but how did we prepare? What did we do? 3-4 things I think that were very important in how we built the company, how Mayflower was built. Processes from day one, very, very important. We put a lot of focus on processes. We put a lot of focus on communication. We focused on getting people who had lived abroad, who had international experience, because the kind of quality, the kind of professionalism in delivery that companies in Europe and US expect, it's not the same thing in India. So it was important for us to have that kind of professionalism in the people. Third thing, technology. We had a focus on technology from day one. So I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but we had something called an innovation hub in Mayflower. This was a dedicated team of people whose job was only to innovate, to look at what technology is out there, what is not there, what we can use, how we can optimize our processes, what will be useful for customers and stuff like that. And then the last part, which was important for us, was customer satisfaction. So there were a couple of things that we did, which I'm not sure everybody else was doing. One is client education. From day one, there was no concept of localization, and it was all translation. So we went around educating software companies on how to write their documentation. What does localization mean? How is it different from translation? Why is it important for them to focus on certain processes, et cetera, et cetera? So we had a team that was focusing on training clients as well, client education. And that I thought made us stand out from a lot of other companies. Related to customer satisfaction is also that we had a proper full-fledged, customer satisfaction management process. So it was a full circle. We called up each of our customers that we delivered projects to on a very periodic basis. We got feedback on everything that we did. that feedback was passed on to production. There was somebody in charge of getting that feedback and then making sure that we changed our processes for those clients internally, and that we made sure that our workflows always matched what our clients wanted. So I think these 3-4 things that we did really made us very different from everybody else in town. And I think that was also one of the ways that we went out and looked at people in other countries, right? Companies in other countries to collaborate with.
So basically, you have run a language company like an IT business, very professional.
Absolutely.
Systems, procedures, and which is probably, if I can just summarize for the benefit of everyone who's listening in, probably the major difference on how people tend to run companies in India. I have seen a lot of people being very emotional about their companies. And I think you nailed it when you said, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a true entrepreneur, an exit strategy is definitely something that you're thinking of. So I think this was really brilliant. Very good. Now, finally, a question for the gentleman who's been waiting patiently. So, Christoph, could you tell us as to what your vision for Sumalingwe was, and how did India fit into that vision? And was Mayflower just happenstance, or again, was it part of a more elaborate vision?
Yes. So Sandeep, thanks for having me. Well, I would not be honest if I said yes, we planned to merge with Mayflower from day one. I mean, obviously, having M&A in our DNA, in our strategy, it's always a game of opportunity, right? So, I mean, these opportunities kind of come, and then you have to spot them and act quickly. So, no, India was not on our game plan from day one. But then at some point it became part of it in a sense, and it was, I think, as when we think of M&As, we think of this let's say exotic, less or more exotic process or structure, but at the end of the day, people buy from people, and companies, and people merge with people at the end of the day. I would say it's not a deal between a company and a company. It's a deal between myself and Madhuri at the end of the day. So that's very important. And I think this chemistry made it work. So we discussed, obviously mergers and acquisitions were in our plan. And then, we happened to meet at an industry conference, actually, in Europe, and explored the idea, and it just made a lot of sense. But India was not like, unlike for many companies, I think India becomes, the outsourcing spot where, because of the lower cost of production, a lot of, and you've mentioned Lionbridge probably being the biggest example, largest example of such an outsourcing play. India wasn't that for us. Obviously, we wanted to benefit from the fact that the payroll is much lower, but it was mainly for us. Was mainly access to the market, and I think to the clients, and that's something Madhuri mentioned. We understood the clients very well, because Mayflower was working with end customers and rather larger IT clients, with probably some of them were Indian, but some of them were branches of international businesses. So that's a portfolio of accounts that we understood very well. The IT vertical was a vertical that we also understood well from the business that we did in Europe and in the US. So it was a match, and we thought it's a good opportunity, obviously, to outsource some of the production capacity, but build that IT international presence, and especially in, I would say, software localization was one of them, but also e-learning. Mayflower had a very strong center of excellence for e-learning. That was something we didn't really do a lot of e-learning, multimedia localization, I would say. So it's very important for us, and it's just played well. But I would probably not do it if it were to be an acquisition. I think the main key was the key component here was actually Madhuri, and the fact that she was on board with the idea. She wanted to join joint the merged company as a shareholder, as a C officer in a sense, right? So I mean, she's actually my co-founder in a sense, right? Although we merged or purchased, but we bought some smaller minority shareholders in Mayflower, but at the end of the day, it was a merger, and it was a personal one, I would say, right? The personal chemistry had to was the most important component for me.
I probably witnessed history in the making, because if you refer to this happening somewhere in Europe, I think we met somewhere in London, where I think I got the feeling that something was cooking. And
it was Mallorca. It was Elia.
Conference.
Yeah, I remember meeting. This was ATC. This was ATC, Sandeep. We met.
I
remember
didn't
that.
mention names because I didn't know whether you wanted everyone to know.
No problem. I think
but we didn't meet. We didn't meet at ATC. No. I mean, we met Sandeep at ATC.
I was joking.
Yeah, we met at Elia, Mallorca, the exec Elia, whatever it was called.
And what he missed saying is that I made a great presentation. He was impressed with the presentation.
Yeah, which is why laughing, because I actually saw you smiling away to Glory. I said, maybe you want to come in and add something.
Where at ATC?
Full disclosure.
You made a great presentation at ATC?
Sorry? No, I was talking and I was talking at events, and you were at one of my events.
Honestly, I think you and Sandeep, you were the only two guys that I kind of met, in Europe or in the States. I mean, none of the other LSPs were traveling, so I think I had limited choice. It was either you or Sandeep, and sorry Sandeep, but Madhuri wins.
No, but I would really think that was honestly a better choice. She's way more practical than I am. So, but anyway, I have another kind of a supplementary question for you, which you kind of partly answered, but I wanted to be a little more specific, because I'm sure there's a lot of LSP audience here who would want to know your perspective of this question. As to why Mayflower, as in you kind of just said, but I'm just taking it in a lighter vein, that it was either me or her. But I'm sure you kind of explored the idea of a couple more people, although I didn't want you to name anyone, but why Mayflower? Why not?
Yeah, so I think in my opinion, for the smaller size, in a sense, Mayflower was very process driven. So that's something I loved from day one, right? So we when we first went to Bangalore, all the centers of excellence, in a sense, presented themselves, and everything was just governed by a process. It was probably less or more mature, but it was a process. So I loved it, and so that was number one. Number two, Madhuri partly mentioned this, but Mayflower hired or employed people from other geographies. From I met there was some Italians, there was some Indians with having lived abroad in Germany and other places. Madhuri herself spent, many years in France. So that was an important part for me, because, at the end of the day, culturally, we're very different. And for the success, I would say that it's one of the main, components or factors in making a company successful is actually not imposing any of that, culture, right? So to what is foreign to me, I wanted to make sure stays native and local in the company we're merging with. So these folks kind of were a bridge between Europe and India. So that was very important for me. Also, like I said, end clients, and in the verticals that we understood well. Mayflower didn't have this Indian capability, in a sense. Mayflower was always focused on European languages, I would say, right? So not Indian languages. So that's something we also understood well, and we thought it's also a platform for us to build. Having that presence. Well, language was also, in a sense, everything was in English. So if we had other possibilities in other places in Asia. English the omnipresent English in India is, at least for documentation, and obviously that was a big factor for us, and choosing India over, let's say, places like Vietnam So that was important. And at the end of the day, you know, India is a huge market, obviously, with you know, the 1.3 billion people and booming economy, and you know, it was also a bet that, you know, at some point this will be huge. It's already huge, but at some point the industry will be huge, and people will want to. I think it was one of the first years of the Make in India program, 2016 or 2015, I think. So that has also opened my eyes to, you know, that's really going to be huge. The move into, you know, local languages and e-commerce, people wanting to buy in their own language.
Sure.
So I thought it was just a good bet to, you know, yeah.
I think some couple of important points there, and again, I'm just taking the liberty to summarize things that I think would be useful for the audience, and this is something that's going to be recorded and available eventually. So I think it's very important that we put it out there. Very few companies I know have that vision of actually hiring people who are not part of the industry. And very honestly, this is not really about me, but it's a very quick personal example. About 2 or 3 years ago, our own company took a different trajectory. And that was the result of a thought process where I realized that I myself was really not capable of leading my own company into the future. And that is exactly when a couple of other people from the industry came over. And that's when we could take that trajectory. Otherwise, that would not have been possible. And I think that was one of the things that you mentioned, that the whole point was it was not just Indians, not just the language people, but from other industries and from other geographies is something that Mayflower.
Yeah, I think India has, you know, seen in some of the largest companies in the world come from India, and there's just a lot of talent that Indian companies can benefit from, and our industry. And it's not only in India. I mean, that problem is observed everywhere else. We tend to hire people with industry experience. Well, obviously, we need a lot of people with industry experience, but I think it's always good for a company to hire people from outside, because at the end of the day, that innovation is not going to come from within. It will come from outside. If there is any innovation to happen, it's got to come from the outside.
And again, just to drill home this point, I was recently speaking to an investor in India, and he happened to be someone from IIM, which is like a premier management institute in India. And I was trying to give him some pitch, and he told me, yeah, you can cut all this. I know all this. I said, how do you know all this? He said, I work with Lionbridge. Okay. And I was aghast. I said, Lionbridge is hiring people from IIMs and IITs. So that's how you actually grow big. So well done, Madhuri. I think that was really a brilliant strategy. In fact, just so that people know, I think even Sudhin does that. I think Sudhin's CEO is not from the language industry, but he's from the IT industry, and he comes with a lot of process and delivery experience. So great. One more question for you, Christoph, before I move back to Madhuri. I just wanted, like, I asked for her inside view. Now I want your view as a complete outsider to the Indian market as to how do European LSPs in particular view India as a market, and are they better aware of the opportunity? I'm now generalizing the question. It's not specific to you. And do you still think they are a little suspicious about India as a market, Indians as people they can tie up with?
Yeah, so well, I would say, you know, now with COVID and the massive hit that Indian economy is suffering from, well, it's difficult to predict anything, right? So, but before that, I would say the market has realized, and you yourself, Sandeep, I mean, leading this great initiative, and, you know, having spoken for, given interviews for you know, company or, you know, media like Slater and the like. I think you yourself are making the industry more and more visible. And I think a lot of these big companies have already realized that. And you've mentioned Lionbridge, but there's also Moravia. We localize. I mean, they work for large companies, right? They work for you know, the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. And all these Googles and Facebooks are also present in India. And with 1.3 billion people, I mean, India is a very important geography for them. So naturally, they drag these LSPs with them, right? Because now, you know, that move to local native languages is also very, very present in India. So I think these large companies have realized. As far as the smaller companies are concerned, and our industry, which is good and bad, is made of a very fragmented picture and puzzle of hundreds and thousands of small LSPs, right? So I think it's still a challenge for these smaller companies, and this is why we've only seen a couple of M&As, right? Either a large company opening up offices or crazy folks like ourselves, merging with Mayflower, because it's really for the bureaucracy. I think for a lot of very India specific challenges, we can probably talk about them later. It's really difficult, right? Like I would say, I would never buy a company, and that headache. I wanted that headache to be Madhuri's headache as well, because I would not be able to cope with it myself, right? So I'm not that crazy. So Sudin mentioned I fly planes, I do a lot of things, but I'm not that crazy. So, but I think it's a play. It's everybody knows India is very large. Everyone knows it's a booming economy, and all the large corporations are there present in India. But it's still I think companies are still a little hesitant, and I think that'll change, right? That'll slowly change, but a lot of that change also depends on you, on how you educate the market, on how clients are, how well clients are educated. I think margins in India, if you think about local Indian languages, I mean, margins are still very low, right? It's the levels of margins are very low. I think very, very difficult to digest for companies from outside, right? Used to working for much higher prices, right? So I think that education will happen, and the market will be more and more visible. So
I think what has happened because of the IT industry in India is translation as a service has been largely commoditized. So you really need to sell solutions more than services, and all the more so in the changing market where probably you're moving to Indian languages, and Indian languages are more solution oriented than service oriented. So you'd only have a certain size of a market share with services, but with solutions you'll have way more. So my next question actually was going to be, and which is probably also the theme of today's discussion, is that is India the next destination for M&As? Despite what happened, the lockdown, we can just put it aside for a bit, because I still bet my last penny on the Indian market, not because I'm an Indian, but just out of common sense. We are a consumption economy, we are not a production economy. So we are going to consume. We are already consuming. Amazon in India grew more during the lockdown than before the lockdown. So we are going to consume, and when I say we, probably 80 or 90% of us do not even understand this interview because it's in English. So if we are talking about, like they like to say here, between Bharat and India, the real market, it seems, is Bharat. So does that still provide an impetus for more mergers and acquisitions in the language industry space? And I'm extending that scope because some of Sitlov's members are also technology companies. So Reverie, for example, is a Sitlov member. They're more of a technology company. Translation is probably 0.5% of their revenue. So when you're looking at mergers and acquisitions, do you see India being the next destination?
Yeah, so at the moment it's not, right. There is a lot of M&A transactions happening, and you can probably report, or Slater reports probably every week there's a new M&A, and it's not in India yet, right. I would say the fragmented nature of the industry, all these bureaucratic challenges and other challenges we can probably talk about, it's not there yet, I would say. India does not have a clear, I would say, for the country of this size, for the economy of this size, there is no one clear, huge, SDL or TransPerfect or We Localize, right? There's, naturally companies that are bigger, but it doesn't have a clear, large leader yet. So that is making it more difficult, I would say. And I think naturally how, and I'm just looking at the patterns in Europe and in the States. I mean, what happens first is companies merge with other companies. Only then you kind of see outside companies coming and buying companies. So I think, it's also a question to you guys, like maybe we'll see a few mergers between Indian companies first. And the more you see these mergers between Indian companies, then you can probably predict that, very soon some outsiders will also come and scoop some of them. And I think it definitely is, when, difficult to predict, but it definitely is a very interesting geography. And like you said, I mean, the market is booming, and e-commerce is booming, and e-commerce means content, and content, means we're getting wealthier and wealthier. So as LSPs, so common sense would say yes. I mean, it is naturally the next, go to place. But it's not as simple as that, right? It's a complex economy of an M&A. Yeah.
It's interesting that you brought this up, because the grapevine does have it that there are a lot of talks. I know at least a few people within our industry who are not even considering, anyone outside India. People are just considering the idea of coming together here between two Indian companies. And I think that makes sense, as in that surely makes sense. One last question for you, Madhuri, before we open up the floor for questions. And I think we also kind of are coming close to whatever time we had allocated. Your judgment on this, as in what would your personal advice, so to say, if we consider that been there, done that, qualifies a person to dole out advice, what would be your advice to an average Indian company? Because I'm sure you have seen many. There are those who claim to do good work. There are those who actually do good work. There are those who think they are doing good work, but they're actually not doing good work. So the entire mix, what do you have to say to them?
There are lots and lots and lots and lots of companies. So somewhere I agree with Chris that as long as we don't start seeing a certain size of companies in India, the mergers between these companies, and companies getting more serious about not being mom and pop shops, but being professional companies. I think this is very, very important for India. I still see even today, I mean, there are a handful of companies who are professionalized in a sense, but the rest of it is still very mom and shop kind of organizations. And that needs to change in a big way for outside companies and outsiders to even consider an Indian company for a merger or an acquisition. In a nutshell, that's it. You need to professionalize. And second thing is, it's a lot of people think it's a lifestyle business. It's not a lifestyle business. A business is a business. You, as an entrepreneur, you want to take it somewhere, right? So at the end of the day, you have to let go of it. So otherwise it's a lifestyle business for you. Yeah. So somewhere I think that mindset has to change, that how you treat your company, what you do with it, how you plan for the future. I don't see a lot of companies planning ahead. When we, before we went and started attending conferences outside of India, I had a 5-year plan already in place. That in 5 years, this is exactly what the company is going to look like. In 3 years, this is where we're going to be. And we achieved all of those, even before we went outside and said, hey, we're here and we can do this for you. So I think that professionalization has to happen in the Indian market. And till that doesn't happen, it's very challenging to even think that there are lots of opportunities. So mindset change, big thing. Second thing is, of course, focus on one thing. Like you said, solutions. Services, nobody buys services anymore. It's all solutions. So focus on growing to that level where you're actually making your customer successful, because that's what brings value at the end of the day. Be it technology, and even technology wise, I think again, there are very few companies out there in India who, which is surprising, because India, as you know, as we all know, is an IT hub. center, all the IT development happens in India. But if you look at our industry, there's really not much technological, there's not much technology coming out of India. So there's a huge opportunity. But I think the challenge is in the mindset. It's not that we're not capable. I think we're very capable of doing a lot of things, but I think we need to just change. There's a switch in mindset that we need.
Very true. Thank you again. And I think this was really great. I honestly enjoyed this probably more than you guys. I don't know how much you enjoyed it, but I enjoyed talking to you.
I miss India so much, Sandeep. So yeah, I can't travel.
I saw you in your Indian attire. So
yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, it was really great talking to you. And I think you summarized it quite well. I think you nailed quite a couple of points that even I kind of agree are the things that ail us, as in we are still mom and pop shops, as you rightly said. It's in the mindset. It's in the mindset. So
yeah, like Madhuri said, I mean, at the end of the day, you're not building and window dressing a company to exit. You want to build a good company. It's not about India or Europe or the US. It's about building a good company. If you have a good company, you can, you have options. You have option to pass it to your son or daughter, and you have an option to exit. But if you don't have a good company, then your options are limited. And at the end of the day, the market will verify that. So, yeah.
Great. So I'm going to hand it back to Sudhin, who is probably ready with a list of questions for the both of you. So over to you, Sudhin, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who joined in. Thank you, Christoph. Thank you, Madhuri. I really hope we meet in flesh and blood very soon.
Thanks, Sandeep.
Alive till then.
Thank you, Sandeep. Yeah.
Yeah. Take care. Over to you, Sudhin.
So, yeah, thank you, Sandeep. And yes, first of all, thank you very much for being open, and because it was some difficult questions also that Sandeep threw at you guys. So just a couple of questions I see here is the gentleman who got his name as Steve Department. I hope that's the right pronunciation. So he says maybe Indian companies, LSPs, should look at acquiring Western LSPs, since that could also unlock a lot of potential benefits. What's your take on it? I'll ask first Madhuri, because this is a direct question. Why didn't Madhuri think of acquiring an international LSP as part of her business plan? And then maybe I'll ask Christoph to add to that.
Okay. Good question. I've merged. It's pretty close to acquisition, I'd say. Sorry. No. So why not? I think it's a brilliant idea. The reason I can talk about my company, I can talk about my experience. The reason why I didn't acquire a company abroad was one, my ambitions were different. I think I had a lot to offer to outside companies at that point in time. And I also wanted, one of the ambitions was also to dominate or to be where a majority of the action is. And if you look at statistics, 50% of language industry action, and a big chunk of our industry action happens in Europe and USA. So it made sense for me to be present in these geographies, right? So I also explored the option of opening offices, right? But it wouldn't give me the kind of growth and fast growth that I wanted. You can open an office, you can hire salespeople, you can start doing your sales, etc. But it doesn't give you the kind of scale that you want to achieve very quickly. So there were two options: acquire a company or merge with another company. So when I went out to conferences looking for partners, I think this was this was on the mind, right? So to merge or to be part of a much larger organization rather than acquiring a company and then dealing with the challenges that come with it.
Great, Christoph. Your take on this?
Yeah,
What do you
so
think?
I think it's, the fragmented nature, right? You have to have some sort of, financial capacity and legal capacity. And, if you're a smaller company, then it's probably more difficult, right? So what you start doing, and this is also how we grew. I mean, we started merging and eventually buying smaller companies in Poland. Then we went, only then we kind of went international. So, I think you'll probably see some companies merging, and then you'll have a clear leader with some $10-15 million in revenue, and then you take it from there and naturally go and buy companies outside, right? It's the fastest, I would say, and easiest way for an LSP to grow in terms of on our market, because we have this beautiful market where it's very fragmented, so there's a lot of room for M&A. Clients tend to be stickier, right? Because you really have to screw up for the client to kick you out, right? Especially if you're integrated to some extent. I mean, the stickiness of our clients is rather high. So the recurring nature of our service, right? Especially in the verticals that the most interesting verticals, the clients tend to come back, and so I think it's it's a beautiful market for M&As, and it's not without a reason that it's one of the hottest industries for PE, right? I mean, it's not been the case. It wasn't the case 10 years ago, but now you see a lot of these PEs buying into the industry. So maybe some local Indian private equities or VC money will finally notice the industry, and with a lot of I've met a few private equity investors in India. I mean, there's a lot of money, right? And even for India itself, I mean, such a huge economy. So I think that process will happen gradually, eventually. But I think it's a great idea. I mean, companies, entrepreneurs should think big and be bold. And it's not only about the US and Europeans buying companies in India. It should be the other way around as well.
Wonderful. And I think just to add to what your idea on private equity, you're very right here, saying that maybe today the PE has not noticed LSP as an industry, but yes, it's got so much of potential. And this idea the gentleman asked is very nice. Only thing that probably is needed is that private equity notices the Indian LSPs, and there's a lot of I would say potential in this industry. If an Indian company acquires a European company or a US company,
but
huge
I think
potential.
You have to start from from yourselves first, right? Because
That's
it's
correct.
difficult to expect a foreign company to go and start buying. I mean, you first have to see some activity between the Indian companies, and then some
Very
capital raised from the Indian private equities, and only then you'll probably see foreigners jumping into the pool, because they'll realize, well, there is water in the pool.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct.
I just want to add another point here, that it's easy to acquire a company, but integration is something you need experience with. So unless you've like Chris rightly said, I mean, a great way to start would be to have these mergers and acquisitions within the Indian context, and then get some experience there, and then you go ahead and start buying companies outside, because it's a totally different world out there. Acquiring a company is way more complex, and then if you start acquiring multiple companies, different kinds of companies, there are lots of integration challenges that you need to deal with. Once you have your due diligence, etc., process completed, and you finish your financial transaction, the real work starts after that. So you do need a lot of experience, and it's good to start small, locally rather.
Very true. Okay, one more question. So this is from Frank from Aston University. what are the main language combinations and directions in the Indian translation market? Would you like to take that, Madhuri?
That's a question for Sandeep.
I agree. That's for Sandeep.
Yeah, so I think today, if we look at the market, it's primarily Indian languages, and you start with probably Hindi at the top, then Bengali, Tamil, Marathi, and Telugu. So I would say these are the top ones in India right now.
Great, thanks. Another question, interesting question. This is something that I also wanted to ask. Nikita Agarwal asked, how long did it take for you to see the synergy after the merger? What do you think was the biggest source of synergy for your companies?
Yeah, so we didn't really look at cost synergies as the main driver for this merger. We looked at upsell and cross sell as the main driver. So we observed this till date, right? So these synergies happen and keep happening, right? So obviously there are a lot of mistakes we made and lots of lessons that we hopefully learned from this merger. But I would say, if in terms of costs, no, we didn't. It wasn't a cost cutting kind of an exercise. It was an exercise. We built capability together. So we started cross selling and upselling. We were also, 2016, 2017, we were kind of opening up this business line that we call data services now. So data collection and annotation. And we looked at Mayflower as a potential hub and a great source of a place from where we can recruit and manage crowd in Asia, mainly in Asia, data collectors, right? So nothing to do with the translation industry, and now data services are the fastest growing business line that we have, and the main driver for growth actually. So that was a very good bet, I think. And the team in India is vital to that. So it paid off in a longer run, because we actually start seeing a lot of these synergies only now. Yeah, I think these were the main ones. Madhuri, you have anything to add to?
No, I think those were the main things that we got. How long did it take? Within a year, actually, of merging, we already started selling to clients, that we had in Mayflower, etc. So yeah. I think within a year. Well, it was a little different because we merged partially initially, and then we did a full merger. But then, yeah, within a year, I'd say by 2016. By 2017, we had already started selling to clients in the US. Yeah.
Sorry, I think I can squeeze in one more question. This is again an interesting question. You had actually hinted at it somewhere in the beginning. The question is, was there any compliance and regulatory challenges?
Oh my God, we need 1 other hour.
Hey, we need a separate session for that. That and integration, 2 sessions.
I could guess that. that.
Yeah, a lot,
so,
I mean.
Yes, I could imagine that, so this is definitely one of those, long questions, but if you can sum it up in maybe.
Yeah, look, I mean, it was a merger. It would have probably been easier if it was just an outright acquisition, right? But for an Indian citizen like Madhuri to obtain, from her perspective, she was getting stock in a Polish company, listed Polish company. So the Indian regulator had to understand this. So I remember visiting the RBI, I don't know how many times in Bangalore, and explaining that, we're the smaller company here listed on, Warsaw Stock Exchange. And they're like, what is Warsaw? It's, yeah, so it was a challenge. And then, also that's also a good, recommendation. If you're thinking M&A, maybe, use a more international bank. It will be easier to digest for both for you and for the acquiring party, maybe. So, it's easier to comply with. a lot. I mean, the bureaucracy is just, it's a little crazy for us to understand, and all these, like for me, the best is the concept of the so-called stamp paper, right? So every agreement you sign, it has to be signed on a stamp paper. Like, I do not understand this. We sign documents on, in PDF, and and all these, to make an international transfer, you need this much of documentation. It's really a challenge, right? This is that's what I'm saying. I mean, without Madhuri, I would not be jumping into this pool. She had to, guarantee that it's all compliant, and it's, also with taxes and, the returns. Something that I would emphasize also is the collection issue. I mean, we work with end clients and rather large corporations, both international and Indian, but we face till date, we have a lot of issue with collections, right? I mean, companies in Europe or in the US, they pay you more or less on time, and, and in India, it keeps just dragging and dragging and dragging. So you have to have a lot of this, working capital. Even though we're making money, I mean, that money is sitting somewhere, at our customers, and it's kind of difficult to chase them, and there's always some, PO number issue, this issue, that issue. So I have a list of all these issues that my team is telling me, this is why we don't have our money in our bank account yet. And then tax returns also take, a lot of time, and especially when you deal with, international transfers, there is and the regulations change a lot, so it's also, a little unpredictable. I think that's also, that maturity of the foreign regulations, I think, is just, a little challenging, especially for smaller companies. Probably the big companies can afford this. The big companies have, the necessary connections to kind of make sure everything's working well for them, and we can't really do that. So yeah, I mean, a lot of legal issues. Again, an advice, I mean, you're working with, you're thinking of merging or selling, maybe have an auditor audit your books, and build that track record. That will really pay off. So, there's not even the big four, EY or KPMG, but, the tier 2 kind of an auditor and a law firm, use them. I mean, it's good for you. Regardless of whether you exit or sell or merge or not, I mean, it's good for you to have your books in place, have your legalese in place. So that investment will really pay off because you're building that track record. And if you're not, then you kind of have to window dress just before the merger, because anyways, the acquiring party will require due diligence. They'll go through the books. And so, have that stuff in order, I would say. But yeah, I mean,
very nice. Very nice. I think you kind of summed it up very well, and a lot of hints.
We should finish on a positive note. So one more question.
Yeah. So one more question. Yeah.
Note before you move on, but later you can complete that.
Yeah. So I think I would say, just to add to what you just said, Christoph, we have been seeing a lot of changes in the regulatory, and I can say that because I've seen what the regulations were much before, and one of the reasons why all the LSPs here are, the core members are also being friends with each other, is that we had to face these challenges together. But from back then till now, we have seen huge changes. The government has made a lot of positive changes. Maybe even from your merging days till now, you would have seen significant changes. And it's happening. Fortunately, it is still happening, and a lot of positive changes. So I'm sure things will be much better for the LSPs now who are looking at M&A activities, and the processes are much more simplified. The openness for international transactions is now there, which was not existing probably when you were looking at it. So great. Sandeep, you wanted to add something.
No, I just wanted to end on a greedy note. So I'm going to request everyone who's listening in to uh, make sure that if you're not already members of Sitlob, please sign up. Please sign up. And if you happen to know any translation company that is not a member of Sitlob, please help us get more members, because I think that's the primary objective. We are not even charging membership fees right now. The whole idea is to come together as a big group of people, and that's the only way any of us, freelancers or companies, is really going to be able to make the most of the opportunity. So yeah, that's my greedy note. You can go on with your vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. I think I'll second that as a vote. Yes, Madhuri, please.
If I may just add, I think it's wonderful to see that all these companies in India are coming together under one umbrella and one association. It's fantastic to see that finally the industry here is coming together, right? And we really needed something like Sitlob for a very long time. I think this is going to change the way our industry functions in India, and I have a lot of hopes for the Indian LSP industry now.
Thank you very much, Madhuri. That was wonderful. I think we are running way out of time. So thank you very much, Christoph and Madhuri and Sandeep for organizing this. And Asaf Ali there, who's not well and still there. So thank you very much for really making all this happen. And thank you all guests who've been patiently listening. Unfortunately, unlike a conference, we would have loved to actually, be much more engaging, but unfortunately we couldn't do that. I hope we've been able to take some questions. I know I've not been able to take some other questions, but I think we ran out of time. We ran out of time now. So thank you very much, Christoph. Thank you very much, Madhuri, and all our partners, Gala and EUATC, who really promoted this event very well in the fraternity. Thank you very much. I hope you have a good day in whichever horizon you are on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.